All right, this video is officially for the nerds who love the depths of sound design. So I want to warn all the beginners and all the intermediate people, this is an advanced video. This is not for people who are at the beginning stages. You will get bored very fast because you might not understand what the heck I'm talking about. So this video is about the unconventional sound design hacks that I use every single day to make my sounds feel different. And unique. So firstly, let's talk about just even if I didn't create the sound from scratch. So let's record something here, 120, just to show you guys some techniques. Let's just record it. Chord. Okay, so now we have that little riff. Now, the first thing I like to do is mess with the stereo field. So I don't know how to actually make this a mono sound, but what I'm going to do is purposely pull in the sound to monos to show you guys what I'm doing here. So I learned this from my Yamaha DX7. So firstly, I'm going to pull it mono. Now, this is not a technique I would use. I'm just showing you guys. We're going to start from mono. Now, normally they use a lot of stereoized sounds, but you don't realize the stereo field is kind of like the ear candy zone. So if everything's in the stereo field, there's nothing that's uniquely in the stereo field. And then you're basically not creating that ear candy effect because everything is stereo. So just by default, sometimes you want to pull your sounds more narrow. Now, this again is an exaggeration for the video today. So here's without. Here's a mono. So it's barely any difference. Here's stereo. So stereo is introducing that tremolo kind of panning effect. Okay, so you can pull it mono without destroying the sound. Now, nextly, what I like to do is this is one of my favorite tools in Logic. It's called sample delay. You could do the same thing with Fruity Stereo Enhancer. What I'm doing is I'm delaying the time difference between the left and the right ear. So it creates a stereo effect, but you can take mono sounds and make them stereo. Okay, or stereo sounds and even, flip them. But let's now add some delay. Now, also too, you want to make sure inside the plugin, I don't have any reverbs or different things on. I hear a reverb. Okay, so that's going to stereoize the sound. Okay, so now let's add this sample delay. You guys can hear that different. I'll exaggerate it. Now this is in samples, not milliseconds. Milliseconds, you'll find that once you go about beyond 20 milliseconds, it will become a noticeable difference. Anything below 20 is almost considered phasing. So if I push this extremely different, you could hear it as a delay. So this creates a very unique stereo field that you don't get by simply just, copying one thing to the left and the right and making a small difference. This is a timing difference. It's a Dr. Dre effect, basically. That's why Dr. Dre's record sound is so big. So that's the first thing I'll do. Nextly, my next favorite plugin in Logic Pro is called Beat Breaker. So I'm showing you guys plugins I would actually use. Okay, so in Logic, I rarely go to third-party plugins, but here we're going to turn this on halftime, and then we're going to blend this in. So this depends on what you're actually running through it. This is great for top-line melodies. All right, so what you could do is, let's say this is too low frequency, you can go inside your MIDI here, and then pull this an octave higher. And it creates a sub-layer, so it creates a top line and a contrast area zone. And you can either automate this or blend it in. So it really adds that darkness to a sound. And now we have a really unique dark sound. So if I turn it off, let's turn it back on. So I'm showing you guys how to just transform simple sounds. We haven't even gotten into the sound design yet. Now, my next favorite plugin for soul stuff, and I'm sharing a real gem, is called the Arturia Spring 636. This is the best preset, just off the default sound. It sounds like the best spring reverb. It's that watery reverb that you guys hear a lot, and you're like, what is that sound? It's probably spring reverb. Okay, so this probably you won't hear it as much on this because it's a very full sound, but here, how about this? Let's take off the output. And so now we can only hear the sound running through the spring reverb. So another technique I do is I'll turn off the direct output and I'll just use buses running through full effect so that we're basically hearing the sound just kind of like in a different dimension. So again, you probably need a drum break. So let's use some drum breaks from busyworksbeats.com. This is in our blueprint pack at busyworksbeats.com/blueprint. It just came out. What BPM were we at? We're at 120. So let's find something close-ish to 120. Let's just do this one. We're at 134. So now we have some drums in here. You guys can hear this in real time. Now I'm going to use this technique on the drums. We're going to send the audio of the drums as a duplicate over to the Spring Reverb. So I'm going to let you guys hear what this reverb sounds like. So this is the dry drum. Hear that, like that liquidy reverb. And it doesn't cloud up your drums. That's what I love about this plugin. So Arturia really, really nailed it with this one. This is a perfect plugin. If there was a perfect plugin, this is it. And it's perfect for soul. It's perfect for hip hop, gritty hip hop. It's perfect for just adding that extra texture that you can't get anywhere else. And that's the Spring Reverb. It's definitely a perfect plugin. Definitely going to be in my top plugins of the year. And see, because we push the piano through the reverb, it doesn't feel so in our face. Okay, whereas most people just have all the sounds going to the stereo out, which makes the volume way louder, and it eats up some of that like dimension. So not all the cases I would do this, but in some cases, you guys might want to think about sending a sound through a bus, through effects, and then not directly as an output. Okay, so those are I have a couple more techniques, but we have to add some more sounds in here. Let's add a top line in here. Let's use the same E-piano. Let's record this in. Okay, so now we have that in. Now another tool I like to use is a pitch shifter. We're not going to use the built-in pitch shifter though. We're going to use the pitch shifter from Kilohearts. It's a free plugin. So type in pitch shifter. So I'm going to show you guys how to use a pitch shifter like a guitar pedal. So if you guys can't afford the, I have here the Microcosm by Hologram. If you guys can't afford it, I think it's like a $500 pedal. I'm going to show you guys how to create a similar effect to the Hologram. We're going to use Kilohearts. Where's it at here? Kilohearts. Oh, KHS. Okay, that explains. Okay, so it's called the KHS Pitch Shifter by Kilohearts. It's free. What we're going to do though, most people just use it as a pitch shifter like this. They'll just turn it up or down. But that's not how we're going to use this. We're going to use this as a randomizer of the pitch. So basically when you turn off correlate, you have this thing called jitter. And it says jitter basically adds a randomness to the pitch. So imagine me turning the tuning knob like this, just really fast. Okay, over time, it creates a detuned effect that creates a more like a drone sound. So let's turn up the jitter. And now we get this super like haunted sound. Now I'll exaggerate the effects so you guys can hear. Not sure what happened to my sustain pedal, so let's re-record this in. Okay, so hopefully that sustain pedal works. I don't know what happened to my sustain pedal, y'all. All right, so I fixed the sustain manually. So as you guys can hear, if I turn this effect off, it just sounds like a normal piano. But when we turn it on, it adds that drone type sound. And then we can combine this with the reverb, the Spring Reverb, for a super haunted sound. I don't know why this track is like, oh, it's still recording my moves. That's why. All right, that was my bit. All right, so basically what we could do is send it to the reverb, the Spring Reverb. And we could do the same thing. We could even make this mono to create that that type of retro effect. Again, people tend to overly stereoize sounds. Now we have a mono sound, and then we can send it to the reverb. And we could even make the reverb, this reverb is set to mono. Let's turn up the, let's mess with the jitter. Now I think if we lower the granular size, it will, let me see here what happens. I don't know if it will sound choppy or not on this. Can't really tell. But for like longer sounds, if you lower the grain size, it will sound choppier. And let's do that same thing where we add the sample delay. Again, this is the equivalent in FL Studio. It's called the Fruity Stereo Enhancer. It's called the phase offset. So here we're using what's called sample delay. And we're stereoizing a mono sound, which is different than the sound itself being stereo. And then I might even, to make it dark, I might run it through Beat Breaker here and then put it on half speed, halftime, and just let it ride, or do the 50%. So now you have 2 layers. Now, real super secret is, this is my super secret for like drill stuff, is I'll run half speed after my reverb. So I'm giving you guys my sauce. I made this up, so if you see this anywhere else, you know where they got it from. Let's add halftime or half speed after the reverb. And now we're slowing down the reverb. We can even add the sample delay to the reverb if you have mono sounds over here, but let's just mess with it. Now we're getting a unique texture, and then we could add that pitch shifter even to the reverb channel. So I pulled back the half speed to 50%. This drum break is from Blueprint, by the way, at busyworksbeats.com/blueprint. And now we have a super unique sound. And again, we didn't even touch Serum yet. All right, now another plugin that people sleep on is the Serum Effects plugin. So not the Serum as a synthesizer, but as an effect. I'm going to lightly touch on this because I don't want to, for this sound, I don't really need it, but I'm just going to show you guys how to use it. So the Serum Effects, we can go to the front panel, go to where it says noise. We want the audio in, and then we have to click where it says note latch. And now the audio is going through Serum. We could do things like add a filter over the reverb, and we can add an LFO so it moves over time. So now you have a unique chain of events. You have the reverb, and then the reverb is going through a low pass LFO. Now you have a unique type of sound. Now I would not do this for this song, but I'm just showing you guys techniques. And you can change out the shape of modulation as well. Let me see if I can load up a shape here. Here we go. So again, there's a million things you could do. You can even run the actual effects in Serum over top of the effects that we just had. So it can get really deep with Serum. Mainly it's just a filter modulation in this case. And then usually I'd run it through maybe some Serum effects. Or let's try let's do one of them. Actually, let's go to effects. We're going to click the effect, go to compressor. Let's do multiband. Let's take off the filter. So here's before. And then we can reshape some of the tones. Like if the lows are too. So there's a million things we could do. We're just shaping the tone here with the mids and lows. All right, now let's get to some Serum, unconventional things I'll do in Serum. So for example, if I start with a sawtooth, I might not use the detune right away. Okay, so I like to think about detune in a different way. Detune, or unison I should say, is basically multiple voices of a saw detuned. So what if we did this on a bus, a stereo bus, and then we use delay in a ping pong fashion to create the width of the unison, and then we add the feedback to create like a phasey response. So what I'll do is I'll switch it to millisecond mode. I'll have this at, somewhere around here. To create variation, what I'll do is I'll right click, I'll modulate the right timing with the velocity. So depending on how hard I hit the note, the right response changes, and I'll turn the mix level all the way up. And usually I'll give it like a defined frequency as well. So we could even have this sorted to the velocity. Now I want to go to the mod matrix to tame some of the ranges, because the ranges can get pretty crazy sometimes. So let's pull in the delay time of the right time by, maximum 60 milliseconds in this case. And then the frequency range, just kind of pull it in. So now I'm going to send this sound to the bus by clicking here, send it to bus 1. And now you guys can hear that response. That phasey kind of response. So it creates like it makes the sawtooth feel more real. Okay. And also too, we can mess with other parameters to add somewhat of a vibrato effect. So we can add either chorus, or we could do, let's just do chorus for now. And we could add that before. And we want this at 100% mix level in this case. So this is the unison part. I mean the detune part. So we're only using one voice of a saw, but it sounds very full because of this technique. And again, we can mess with the feedback for more phase. So that's an unconventional technique, is to use delay to create wave interference. All right, so let's record this in. Okay, so it's a saw, so it's very bright, and as you guys can hear, it doesn't really match the tone of this kind of hip hop. So if we were to just, use it as is, it wouldn't fit. It's just doing a lot. So we can tame it down with the filter, but I'll show you guys a different technique. So let's copy this over, paste. And something I noticed and learned about RetroSense is they didn't use a bunch of harmonics. So let's click here to the pencil tool. Now, if you notice, this sawtooth goes all the way up to like the 1000th harmonic, which is crazy, the 512th harmonic. What we're going to do is turn all this off, just left click and drag it in. We're only going to work with the first 10 harmonics here, because anything else beyond that point is just kind of insane. So let's go up to the 10th harmonic, boom, and then anything above this, we're just going to turn off. So let's just left click and drag. I don't know if there probably is a faster way to do this, but I don't know how to do it. So I'm just going to manually do it, because these harmonics are so high pitched, you guys can't even hear them anyway, most of these frequencies. So let's just turn these off. Again, there's probably a shortcut way to do this, but I don't know how to do it. Okay, so now we have still a sawtooth shape, but without 80 gazillion harmonics. And it's less, it's less bitey, okay? So let's solo the sound. Actually, okay, here's what I'll do. I'll duplicate this. Dang, oh no, I know what we could do. Let's duplicate this track. I just want to show you guys the before and after. Let's have this Serum play the original sawtooth, just to show you guys how bright that initial sawtooth is. And you guys got to remember, this is analogous to me saying how a lot of default sounds from your plugins are stereo. I think a lot of sounds by default are just overly bright as well. They have too many harmonics in it. So with all that being said, we're going to play the before saw, which is super bright. after. See how it still gives you a soft feel, but it's not as just taking up the entire mix. Okay, so especially if you're making hip hop, you want to leave room for the rest of your instruments. So that's why, you know, this chiseling down the harmonics is a part of my technique. That's very unconventional. Now we can still go in and add more harmonics or change the velocities per. So we can change the balance here. See this frequency, even at the 24th harmonic, you guys can hear that frequency. Like we're never gonna truly need that frequency beyond that point. Like that's why the 512th binary is insane to think that's even in here. So I'd say, you know, anything from about the first harmonic up to the 10th, or maybe the 10th technically would be 11. So about the first to the 9th harmonic, the fundamental all the way up to the 9th harmonic. That's usually the range. Okay, anything beyond that point is just really, really high frequency. For more density, you're going to focus on that fundamental. For more clarity coming to the speaker, you're going to focus on the second and third harmonic. And now we can mess with, you know, different phase wave interference here. Here's where let's take off this chorus. And I'm going to allow more phase interference here. Okay, so now we're creating like a psychoacoustic effect. If we added unison, it's going to sound more like a drone. I don't even want that sound for this vibe. Okay, so that's just an unorthodox thing I'll do. It's just a way of thinking. And also too, in Serum, I'll show you guys a couple of secrets I like to use. Under the global tab, I like to switch this to the ultra mode. And I've done this for my presets in Helios at busyworksbeats.com/blueprint. You can actually get Helios as one of the limited time bonuses, which ends tonight actually, as far as the base level. So Helios is 340 sounds made for Serum 2. So basically another thing I'll test is the tuning. You know, you don't want to throw people off, but I like 432 hertz tuning and 427 tuning. It just has that Yamaha sound. So it goes down to as low as 430 in this case. Another thing I'll do is I'll mess with this detune matrix here for this like sequence, and I'll just kind of nudge these up and down. So it's essentially creating a unison. One more of my favorite techniques is if we go to matrix, let's go to note on alternative and use this for oscillator A or B. And we'll do left, right bipolar mode, turn it all the way up. So basically every time you hit a note, it pans left or right. And I have a nice full sound. Now this tuning is not matching the other instruments, so I'm going to pull it back to regular tuning here, but I do like to tune down to 427 sometimes. All right, so I'm not sure how to turn off the stereo output for this specific sound. I'm not sure it's possible in Serum. Maybe it is. But what I'll do instead is I'll just add a filter, a strong filter to the sound. I believe the filter comes separate than the actual bus. If not, then I'll correct this step. But basically, to get rid of the original sound, I'm just going to add a filter and just turn the cutoff all the way down. So now we should technically only be hearing the bus. So let's turn down the bus. So yeah, we're only hearing the bus. For that drone sound, we can pull back that chorus. Now, if I want more tone, I'll bring in the original. Another thing, people don't mess with this drive knob a lot. They don't realize that this adds a lot of harmonic content before it hits the filter, I believe, is the sequence. And then the filter chisels out the harmonics. So it's another way to get a nice full sound without adding a bunch of stuff. So let's hear it without, the bust. So see if once I add this drive, it gets grittier and bitier. So we're adding more harmonics to it, higher frequencies. Another thing I'll do, we'll just kind of add this in, is I'll add oscillator B. We're going to switch this to a sine wave. I like to modulate with sine waves. We're going to go here to where it says FM from B, and we're going to turn this up. So sometimes I'll have this velocity sensitive, so it's a dynamic approach, and then I'll go to the matrix and just turn down the range so it's not so aggressive. So the harder I hit it, the more frequency modulation we get, and then I can go to oscillator B and just mess with the octave to create different tones. Now, kind of more advanced stuff. Here's my last tip for today, because I can go infinitely for this. We're going to use the sample and hold feature and then drag this over the fine tune. This is one of my favorite tools to create more of a Griselda type detuning. It's not like vibrato where it's like, it's not like that. It seems more random. And then we're going to pull this in to about 31 cents of a range. And now it's detuning the sound based on this frequency. Now let's run this sound through our spring reverb. So it has that same. Let's take out some of these other chords. Now I can just go back and adjust the harmonics with the filter and the drive. Now for this vibe, because we're going for this like super detuned sound, I'm going to add the pitch shifter here for that final grain sound, almost like we're running it through a guitar pedal. Here's what I'll do for arrangement purposes though. I'm going to copy this and let's see, Command R. Copy. And now we're just gonna have the sawtooth by itself so you guys can hear. All right, so now it's separate. Let's take off that pitch shifter. It's a little too aggressive on the sound. All right, so I'm going to tweak the sounds a couple times. Now, another thing about my sound design, I love the channel EQ in Logic. Just sounds crazy. Just turning stuff up can sound crazy. So let's go to channel EQ. I'm just going to show you guys a couple of my mixing plugins, not to go so deep with this video. But I love running it through this channel EQ, boosting the lows if I have to, and then boosting the entire signal. It just adds so much thump to the beat. And I'll run it through a compressor. Now, sometimes if the volume's too aggressive, I'll run the compressor first. That way we can tame some of those peaks with what's called the soft clipper here, and then we're going to turn the threshold up. Also, too, the expander has a saturator in here. Most people overlook it. It's called the soft clipper mode over to the right. For this mix, we can add another plugin. This is kind of hit or miss, but it's called Distortion 2. And this thing really adds a nice grit to the sound. It just depends on the genre though. But I love this plugin too. And I'll basically turn the mix level down. Just wanted to show you guys some sound design tricks I use, including Serum and a lot of Logic Pro, as you guys can see. But that is how I, get into my bag in terms of sound design. So very unconventional ways to use stuff. And hopefully you guys learned something. If you want to learn more, go to busyworksbeats.com. Look for our sound design course. I have multiple courses about sound design. So go to busyworksbeats.com to learn more. All right, guys. Peace out. Subscribe if you're new. Peace.